Let's talk about Tristan from the Gilmore Girls. My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. Tristan Dugray is a character that we meet at Chilton on Rory's first day of school, so the second episode of the first season of Gilmore Girls. And I definitely think, and I think this has been confirmed other places actually, that he is supposed to have the arc that Logan has. So he is filling that storyline. He ends up getting some other jobs, and so the character gets written off of the show, and he goes and has a very successful career in film and on One Tree Hill. But Rory still needed this intellectual equal. She still needed this guy who was part of her mother's world. She needed this guy that was vulnerable around her and not around anybody else. Somebody that was romanticized by the other girls in their life, but Rory saw through the bullshit and saw to a different version of him than what he presented to everybody else. Tristan and Logan both start flirting with Rory in a way that she's uncomfortable with on the very first time that she meets them. They both have the like poor little rich boy storyline in which they are being forced into a life that their fathers want for them that they don't want for themselves. They both are pranksters who get kicked out of a lot of schools and who get yelled at by those very overbearing fathers. And when you realize and think about the fact that Rory's arc was always going to be that she tells her mother she's pregnant at the end of the season, at the end of the show, whenever the show was going to end, Rory was always going to be pregnant. And if you have like two and a half brain cells to be able to analyze story parallels and mirrors and foils within stories, you know that Logan is the father of Rory's baby in A Year in the Life. So Rory is living out all of her mother's same mistakes, becoming pregnant by a man who doesn't want to be a father and certainly doesn't want to be a father to her child, but he comes from this 1% world. He comes from this world of poor little rich boys who are being forced down a path that their fathers want for them that they do not. This is the same thing that Christopher experienced, that his father was pushing him to be a certain type of man and he instead went to go live in California and ride a motorcycle. So Tristan was always supposed to be that guy. Once the character got written off of the show, they had to improvise and they brought Logan on instead. Now, I think they had Jess as a way to sort of fill that gap once they realized the show was going to run for a while and they weren't going to get canceled at the end of season 2 or season 3. But then they introduce Logan while Rory is in college, and they are together for seasons 5, 6, and 7. And remember, the showrunners were not the ones running the show for season 7. It got handed off to somebody else. So everything that happens between Logan and Rory in season 7 was not intended to happen that way. But if you see that at the end of season 6, Logan is being shipped overseas to London to go work for his father's company, and Rory is going to stay living in his apartment here in New Haven, that is very similar to the setup that we have in A Year in the Life, in which Logan is living overseas and Rory is a kept woman while Logan moves on and is engaged to somebody else. That storyline, I believe, was always intended to be Tristan Dugray, that he was going to fulfill that will they, won't they guy in the background who was always sort of like Rory's one who got away or the one that she couldn't ever really see her with, the one she wants to want, the thing that Lorelai says to Christopher in season 7. And that would make a really nice foil to the story, or make a really nice mirror between Lorelai and Rory's characters. They live a lot of parallels. They are living out the same mistakes, but with a few changes. That Rory has broken some of these generational issues, or Lorelai, I guess, has been the one breaking them. She has a much better relationship with her daughter than Emily had with Lorelai. And so when the actor left the show and the writers had to do something different, they had to find another character who was going to fulfill many of the same roles within that story. And this is the thing that writers can take away from this. Your characters are not there just to be a character on the page because you just like need space filled up. They are serving a function within the story. Tristan served a function to be a threat to Dean, to be this other guy, this tantalizing thing in this world that Rory is just barely starting to explore. And by the time Rory meets Logan, she is very entitled to this world. But I'm a Gilmore, for God's sakes. Don't they know where my ancestors came from? She goes through this growth arc, but she always needed that character. She always needed that man to live out the same arc that her father had lived out 16 years previously. So identify what role your characters are playing within the story, not just that they are there because you need somebody to be swinging a sword during this scene, but what function do they actually serve within the story, and make sure they are living up to that function while still being a protagonist of their own story, just not the one you are reading right now.